From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join our conversation. Today, we record episode 20. We have made it. So this episode is dedicated to all those people who said we couldn't do it, that we were stupid for trying, and that we were going to fail miserably. I'm talking to you, Mom.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day.
I'm just kidding. I love you, Mom. And now,
I love you too, Nick's mom.
Broadcasting from Level 9 Studios. That guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some pod therapy.
Has your mom discovered the podcast?
Nope.
Mine did. She did. My sister sent it to her. And so my mom, went through this whole thing where she called. She's like, "Hey, I listened to your radio show." And I was like, "Cool. Thanks."
Well, my mom either hasn't or she's too disappointed to talk to me about it.
That's the more likely explanation is she knows all about it, but she chooses not to ask. She's
like most people in America, she chooses to pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah. That's what it is. Most Americans know about pod therapy, but you don't bring it up in polite conversation.
Maybe it'll go away if you just don't give it any
look
attention.
At them. Don't look them in the eye. Eventually, they'll peter themselves out. So, but happy Mother's Day to all the mommies out there. Congrats.
Yeah, definitely.
And all the moms to be. You are good people, and we are grateful that you continue to populate the human race. So, thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You did something special for your wife, I assume?
Yeah. We definitely did the whole Mother's Day thing. I took her out to the Bellagio. We went to that crazy arboreum thing where you can see the beautiful trees and plants and exhibits, and it was really pretty. And we took her out for breakfast and brunch, then did a barbecue thing and stuff too. So, did your dogs do anything nice for you?
No.
Oh.
No.
Oh, geez. Maybe they forgot. Hey,
probably.
You're not forgotten though. Yeah, I'm with you in spirit. So, did you call your mom?
Yeah, I did.
All right, that's a good something. I called mine.
Did something.
I totally did that. So,
yeah.
Yep.
I'm a terrible son. I should have done more than call.
Yeah. Well, I actually have a financial arrangement with my sister. I don't remember birthdays or Mother's Days or anything. She does, and she just sends me the bill. And so now that we've discovered Venmo, she just texts me and says, "Hey, you owe me this much." And I don't even know what we got her. I have no clue what the deal is. I just Venmo her cash. And the best thing about Venmo is you can say what the money is for. And so I always write illicit drugs, political influence, hush money. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's
That's
been
a
great
good plan.
It's a really good arrangement. My mom still gives me all the credit though. Because you're such a great guy. You got me this. I'm like, hey, happy Hanukkah or whatever it is.
So Carrie, if you're listening, hint, hint.
Yeah. Is that your sister?
Yep.
Yeah. Come on, we can work this out. Yeah. No, it's funny, though, because my sister, she'll get my mom something, in this case, she got her, this ticket to go out and do this design and wine thing where, you paint and you get to drink wine, and my grandmother's going with her, too. And my sister got her a card that says, "Hey, we hope you guys enjoy this, blah, blah, blah. Happy Mother's Day from Maddie." And then underneath it, in parentheses, it says, "Financed by Jim." That's all I get. But it's plenty. I'm fine with this. The fact that I was even involved at all is acceptable.
That's awesome.
Yep. So happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, it's worked out so far.
All right. So let's get into our opening segment.
Yeah.
Some research that came in. We should just call this segment Into the Weeds.
Oh, okay.
Because we're going to get into the weeds a little bit.
It's very weedy. Yeah. This is a weedy segment.
Yeah.
But yeah, fresh off the headlines, man. This was ripped right out of the news.
MSNBC?
Yeah.
I think. So MSNBC published a study that Blue Cross Blue Shield, the insurance provider, did. And they found that depression they call an epidemic in America. Mm-hmm. So they did this study among millions of their customers and discovered that depression has risen dramatically among all age groups. So here are some really interesting findings, which I already kind of suspected
Anecdotally,
that.
As therapists, we see it so much, but it's interesting for the insurance company to come out and say, "Hey, listen, we did the survey, and we're looking at our records, when this is diagnosed, and holy cow, it's on the rise."
And not only on the rise, but by a lot. That's the thing that stuck out to me. So one of the things that they found is the diagnosis of major depression has risen dramatically by 33% since 2013.
Holy crap.
Which wasn't all that long ago.
Dude,
so
that's
33%.
insane. Like if you told me right now, hey, diabetes is up 33% in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's a public health crisis.
Oh my God. Yeah, shut the country down. Like that's insane.
Yeah. 2.6% of youth aged 12 to 17 were diagnosed with major depression in 2016, a 63% increase
Oh my God.
from 1.6% in 2013.
So that's people 12 to 17. So that's the kids. That's the
Right.
teenagers.
So that's our adolescent population
63% increase.
in 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Right. They also found that among young adults aged 18 to 34, 4.4% had major depression in 2016 compared to 3% in 2013. So that's a 47% increase.
Dude, this is that. Wait, so that's like the working adults, like 18 to 34.
Right.
Wow.
So that's our millennials.
Oh my gosh, that is insane. I think that's the millennials. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And the highest percentage of major depression diagnosis were among people aged 35 to 49. So the survey found that 5.8% of 35 to 49-year-olds had major depression in 2016 compared to 4.6% 3 years before.
Oh my gosh, that is
So
amazing.
from 4.6% to 5.8.
Jeez, that's incredible, man. So it sounds like all totaled together, 33% increase in depression nationally whenever they slice it out between all the different demographics. And this is no joke. Blue Cross Blue Shield is a national heavy insurance. They see everybody in every state. That is incredible information. Oh my gosh. But anecdotally, I think as therapists, you and I see this every day. I mean, it is probably, I would say it is the second most common thing that I bump into. Anxiety would be a close second,
Right.
I think. But depression is right there. And they tend to play together. Depression and anxiety tend to kind of be two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. They very, like you said, we see it all the time.
Gosh, it's like every day.
Frequently. Yeah.
So, in this kind of study, Nick, I mean, when you're seeing like this much data, with this incredible spike, and you kind of look at that just from your therapist chair as a guy who sees this and treats this. If you had to make some guesses and say, what do we attribute some of this to? I mean, do you think that there's a portion of this this has always been here, but now we know how to diagnose it, and so maybe there's more reporting going on, and that's contributing to the rise? Or how do you unpack some of that? What do you think?
I think that's probably part of it. I mean, obviously, the better that we get at being able to detect something,
Right.
we're going to see a rise in whatever it is that we're detecting.
Yes.
But I think that's only a small piece. Actually, the article really digs into some other factors that I think are really interesting, and I totally agree with, which is just the way that our culture has kind of shifted. We're not as community-based anymore as we used to be. The article kind of talks about that, touches base with that a little bit. Now, in some sense, we are more connected with people through social media.
Right.
But it's a very artificial connection.
Yeah, sometimes that's like a toxic connection.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think it is. And we've talked about it on this show before, how when you were looking through social media, it has been linked to increased depression. There are
Right.
studies out there that will support that simply because it makes sense. You are comparing your life to other people's highlight reel.
Right.
Everybody's posting the highlights of of what's going on.
Right.
in
You
their
once
world.
said comparing your backstage to other people's front stage.
Right.
That's not fair.
Right.
That's not, but that's what we do because we're looking at their highlight and going, oh, well, I didn't eat, chicken fricassee for lunch. I had a Big Mac or whatever. Like my life sucks. But so the article specifically in the study, it sounds like they unpacked that as one of the things that might contribute to it.
Yeah, and I think that mixed with the fact that we aren't as community based, and
Right.
we see that a lot now. In our neighborhoods,
Yeah.
right? I mean, for example, how many of your neighbors do you know personally?
Just one.
Right.
Yeah.
And how odd that is. And especially here in Vegas, like where for those of you who aren't from the Las Vegas area, if you go in your backyard, what do you have? You've got
Right.
a brick wall
Right.
separating your property from everybody else's. You can't even see your neighbors.
But I think your point still writes larger for the nation in the sense that culturally we're not the same people that we used to be, you know, in the sense that we're not connected as much. It's funny you mentioned how many neighbors do you know. Remember the other day when we were driving to sushi and that random Mustang pulled up and started waving at me? That was my neighbor.
Right.
His name's Cam. He's a neat guy. Yeah, I was a son's soccer coach back in the day, so that's how I know him. But so that's an interesting point. So the depression epidemic is on the rise, like vigorously. I mean, we're talking 33% increase in 5 years. That's insane. Like that outpaces everything. The only thing that might even hold a candle to that is the opiate epidemic. And so, but depression, I think it bumps into everything else because I think you and I very rarely just see a person struggling with depression. If they're going through depression, it's very common that they self-medicate with alcohol, with drugs, with marijuana. They sometimes develop an unhealthy relationship even with psychiatric meds. They usually have absenteeism from work or they're underperforming. Their marriages struggle. Their families struggle. Everything in life, it's a cascade effect of depression. It's not this one little bottled up problem that doesn't touch anything else. It sort of bleeds into everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, everything you just mentioned as far as relationships, how they function at work, just how they function in society.
Right. Yeah. And then, you know, another part of it too, when we're talking about what depression is, and that was something you and I were kind of chit-chatting about on the way here, was sort of that myth. Like, when is it depression and when is it not?
Yeah, so if we're going to have that conversation, we should probably dig into the weeds a little bit and kind of describe what a therapist would look for and how we diagnose depression. Because it's not simply, you know, I think a lot of people will say that, you know, like, well, I'm going through depression because my dog died.
Right.
That's not really clinical depression.
Right. And that's actually a good point. In the study, if you listened carefully to what Nick said, he said they were diagnosed with, and this is a quote, major depression disorder. And so this is a good point. Like, if you're listening to the news in the world, you're going to hear the news reporters say, hey, this is this epidemic, this is going on. Since you're listening to pod therapy, I think what we can do differently is we can also unpack how do we medically classify this. This report, this research comes from an insurance group, right? So they're saying people like Nick and Jim reported depression to us and billed us for it this often, right? And so that starts with us. We're the gatekeepers of what this means. So Nick just raised a good point. In life, I think depression is this very common word for us. And so most of us are comfortable saying, you know, I've been really depressed lately. You know, since the you know, Packers lost the Super Bowl, I've been, you know, really depressed lately, or, you know, my dog died. I've been really, and that's not to minimize those things. You know, that's a real event in your life. But I think it becomes this confusing, muddied word where we're not always sure what depression is. So, Nick, why don't we actually go through some of that? Let's talk about some of the symptoms that you and I are looking for when we're going to diagnose depression. So, you know, we could talk about anhedonia. That's one. Maybe you can define that for folks so they can understand that. That's a jargony word for us.
Yeah, so anhedonic is basically just completely flat.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, dysthymia is – I always get those two kind of confused. So, like –
yeah. So, yeah, for the listener, this is fun. I love when we get the jargon. So, anhedonia, like Nick said, it's flatness. And so what that means to us is like pleasure deafness. It's like so hedonia actually comes from Latin, right, or actually Greek, and hedonism, right, pleasure, like sex and fun. Anhedonia means lack of. So it's a lack of
just
pleasure.
Not finding pleasure in it.
So if you find that you're pleasure deaf, things that you used to enjoy you don't enjoy, you're just kind of flat and despondent, that is a criteria. That is something we're looking for. And if we're seeing that, we're paying attention to that, we're starting to formulate that diagnosis. Dysthymia is a different form of depression. And what the listener probably doesn't know is that there's actually lots of different kinds of depression. And Nick and I actually, you know, we'll go through it and we'll slice this thing pretty thin. You can have major depression disorder. You can have dysthymia with rapid cycling. You can have a version of bipolar. You can have acute depressive disorder. There's lots of different ways. You can have adjustment disorder. And so these all kind of come from different places and they all kind of have different criteria. When we're talking about major depression, this is what you as a person in America are usually associating with that concept of like a long-lasting blues where this person's life is kind of falling apart. So criteria that we're kind of looking for, and again, the first thing we're looking for is overtime. If you're having a bad weekend, Nick's not going to diagnose you with depression and call your insurance. Like that's not what we're looking for. We're usually looking for over 6 months. We're looking for symptoms, things that show us that your life is kind of changing. So a depressed mood, just feeling low, emptiness, hopelessness, anhedonia, which is that loss of pleasure, not feeling any hope in life, any happiness in life, no joy. If we see weight loss or significant weight gain, that can tell us that, you are living differently as a consequence of this. We might see something like insomnia or hypersomnia. So insomnia is not sleeping, right? Hypersomnia is sleeping way too much. And if we see a balance shift from your sleeping habits, that's also something we're looking for. A lot of people don't know this, but we're also looking for physical symptoms like what's called psychomotor agitation, or psychomotor retardation during the day. And so what that means, again, is that you're twitching, you're fidgeting, you're shaking, or you're slow. Your reflexes have come down. And we're actually seeing a restlessness or a drowsiness and a fatigue. And that's another thing, is fatigue, loss of energy, seeing this low kind of battery significantly throughout the day. Feelings of worthlessness, excessive or inappropriate guilt is something we're looking for. And here's another thing a lot of people don't think about, but diminished ability to concentrate, indecisiveness, suddenly a loss of your ability to sort of pilot your own life, and feeling listless and kind of despondent and not dialed in. And then for a lot of people, Nick, there's that recurrent thought of death. And, suicide is a big risk in this as well. And so those folks are kind of the package of symptoms that Nick and I are looking for. We actually have kind of a checklist. And so when we're getting to know somebody and we're doing an assessment and kind of a diagnosis, we're often interviewing them looking for evidence of those traits. And if we're seeing those traits, we're getting closer to saying, you know what, this is a problem. But an important criteria that the listener needs to understand, Nick, is that even if you can check all the boxes I just said, the most important thing is also clinically significant distress.
Right. Yeah. So it has to be impacting your life in some manner, which if you're having all those symptoms, it's probably is, right?
It probably is.
It's affecting your relationship with other people. It's affecting your ability to go to and be productive at work. All sorts of different impacts in your daily life.
So now we've identified that there is this depression epidemic. We've identified for the listener, hey, clinically, here's how we medically see this, and here's how we pick it out of a crowd. But Nick, what are some of the things that we'll do non-prescription? I mean, besides giving people medicine, what is one of the things that we might do to try to help them?
Well, yeah, so there's a couple different ways of treating this. There's the pharmacological way of prescribing a medication.
Which we're fine with, by the way. We have no beef with that. We're all the above guys. We believe in kitchen sink therapy. Throw everything at it. And
then psychotherapy, which is what Jim and I will do. So, once we get somebody with depression involved in therapy, then there's a variety of different techniques and therapeutic models that can be used within psychotherapy. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, solution-focused brief therapy, motivational interviewing. There's a lot of different techniques and
a lot of different approaches. And, one of the things that you had mentioned was cognitive behavioral therapy. And so what a lot of folks that are kind of uninitiated in psychology don't know is that we as therapists all have different therapeutic theories for how we approach a problem. And I usually compare this to mixed martial arts fighting, like UFC. Put any given amount of fighters in the octagon, they all fight differently. Some are on the ground, some are kickers, some are punchers, some are wrestlers, but they all have the same goal. It's just like beat up the bad guy. And so like as therapists, we all have these different theories that we approach from, and that's how we fight the problem. But you're a huge advocate of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is considered the gold standard when you're dealing with depression and anxiety. What does that look like? I know we don't want to get – well, you said this segment's called Getting Into the Weeds, so you gave us permission to do it. And, folks appreciate that sometimes. We're going to wrap it up. But, unpack that for the listener a little bit. Teach them what is cognitive behavioral therapy. Why is that a unique approach, and how does it think about the problem?
Well, and as an addiction specialist, I love CBT because it works so well for that. But essentially, we're looking at how we view a situation, the perception that we have over a situation, how that affects our emotions and our behavior. So, like the example that I always like to use is getting an understanding of our automatic thought process. And here's the thing that's really kind of interesting, and it's a different way of looking at it. You've heard the that old saying of like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right.
Well, I was reading this book. It's called the name of the book is "This Is Your Brain on Music,"
Oh.
And it's written by, I forget the guy's name, but he's a neurologist and really brilliant. And he kind of answers that question. That riddle has an answer. And
Okay,
the answer
about
is,
the tree.
Yeah, the answer is no.
Okay.
And the reason why is because sound is internal. Sound happens
In the brain.
inside our head.
Okay.
Right? So if there's no receiver, then there's
sound.
no sound.
There's just
Right.
vibrating wind.
So it's kind of like taking that approach to things, but looking at that from like in terms of like an event.
Right.
When an event happens, I think we're brought up to believe that an event happens and that event causes an emotional reaction.
Right.
Right. But in reality, the event is just the event.
Right.
It has no meaning until we give it meaning.
Right.
So whatever that event means to me, that's what causes the emotional reaction, and that's what then drives the behavior. So as an example, let's say, it's my favorite example to use. Let's say we've got Timmy. Timmy is 9 years old, and he's a Little League baseball player, and Dad doesn't show up for his game.
Right.
It's not that Dad didn't show up for his game that causes him to feel hurt and sad. It's what it means to Timmy that Dad didn't show up.
Right.
So if he internalizes that event and says, Dad's not here because Dad doesn't care about me, then that part right there, that's what drives the emotion.
I see.
Then that's what drives the behavior.
Yes.
Right? He could just as easily come up with a different automatic thought or a different meaning behind the event, which will have a completely different emotional reaction, emotional response, different behavior following that up.
And so CBT basically says the way you interpret your reality affects your response to your reality, and even colors the kind of life you're going to live, whether or not you experience anxiety or whether or not you experience depression, which is weird for folks. And I remember the last lecture you gave on this, somebody had raised their hand and said, but depression feels like it happens to me. I don't feel like I'm choosing it. And that's a really frustrating thing for people that have depression is they'll say, somebody loves them and say, why can't you just cheer up? Why can't you just not think about it? Why can't you just get through it? Feel better, and it's like that's maddening to them because they're like, that's insulting to me. Like,
it is.
I don't elect for this. I am suffering from it. I'm trapped inside of a glass box.
Yes.
And I don't know how the hell I got in here.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because that's something you don't want to say to somebody who's depressed because they know that.
Yes.
Like, I've known people who have made comments such as like, well, he's got a good girlfriend and he's got a place to go.
Everything's going great.
Why is he depressed?
There's no reason.
He shouldn't. Well, he knows that.
Yeah.
But that's part of what depression is.
Exactly.
That's what makes it so frustrating is because the person knows that like, I know I shouldn't be feeling this way, but I do.
Yes. And so like a therapeutic approach in cognitive behavioral therapy is how we reprogram the person's thinking so that the way that the world around them makes sound in their mind is fundamentally different. They hear it differently after we go through that process of rewiring them, which actually has a mitigating effect on the symptoms of depression to the point where we can actually get through it.
And there is actually, what I described, that 4-step process, event, automatic thought, emotion, behavior, is that's one part of it. That's kind of the what we call thought mapping. There's also the CBT triangle, which is kind of this triangle that's between your emotions, your behaviors, and your thoughts. And the idea is that within this triangle, you've got these arrows, but they go both ways. So meaning that if you change one of those three, you fundamentally affect the other two.
I see.
So if I am dealing with depression and my emotions are sadness, hurt, hopelessness, my behaviors are I stay in bed all day, I don't talk to anybody, I don't get out of the house, and then my thinking is life isn't worth it, and I'm never going to have success, I'm never going to go anywhere. I just need to change one of those three.
Right.
And I change the other two.
They'll all be affected.
So for me, I like to change. I like to work on behavior, and this is just my own personal thing. It's easy for me to change my thinking if I'm doing something different.
I see.
So forcing myself to get out of the house,
and trusting that the rest will change as a domino effect.
I'll go out to Red Rock. I'll go hiking.
Right.
Because I know when I go out and I get active, or when I go to the gym in the morning, Days I go to the gym, I'm positive.
Right.
I feel really good.
Start with the behavior and the rest will follow.
Yeah. So I do that, and then that will then change my thinking and will change the emotion.
Great advice.
There's one last thing. You opened this can of worms. Remember that. So,
yeah, I did. Go ahead.
One last thing with this too. I heard somebody say once, and I really truly believe this, and I say this to each one of my clients in the morning. I used to do the group in the morning, like one of the first groups of the day, and I would always challenge them. Win the first hour of the day. The first hour of the day is the most important. If you can win that first hour, you've won the rest of the day.
Wow.
Okay. But, and that means getting active right away, because your first instinct, the very first thing that happens is your alarm goes off and your first reaction to it is to fight it.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
You have to win that battle.
Yes.
And then you have to win the next battle after that. And if you win the first hour, then you've set yourself up. So every morning, 5 days a week, I'm waking up, I'm going to the gym.
Right. You're winning that first hour.
Yeah, before I get to work. So every morning when I get to work having already done something that I didn't think I could do.
Right.
Imagine the power that has on your day.
Yes.
When you can start off your day having already accomplished something that you didn't think you could do.
Yeah, it's a cascade effect. And it's like what you talked about with if you can affect one of the pieces, the rest can be affected as well. You can move this in segments. But, by way of just coming back to the study, one of the things I see in this, Nick, is when I see a 33% increase in the diagnosis of this, that can scare people, but also as a therapist, it makes me very hopeful because it shows me that 33% more people are also getting active, like they're putting their feet in the office of a therapist. And if you're out there today and you are experiencing this, just know I'm an all of the above kind of guy. I think there's a role for medicine. I think there's a role for therapy. I think they work best together. I don't think you should just go take your pills and then go back to bed. I think that you need to get out, and you need to get out and do something with us. And, just know that this is a form of medicine. Psychology is a form of medicine. It is effective. You didn't choose to experience this. We know that. We don't blame you for that. But you are responsible for your recovery from it. And change is possible with help. And don't be afraid to get that help because it can really make a difference in your life. You don't have to live that way. There's another way to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is actually really, I'm glad you brought that up because you can look at this and you can be really scared. But you also have to remember, how is this data collected? It was collected by an insurance company,
right?
Which means they have a diagnosis,
yes.
Which means they've received help.
Yes.
So we could also say that more people are receiving help.
Yes, 33% more people have been getting help since 2013.
Yes.
So that's another way to look at it. If you're out there today, add to that number.
Yep.
Make that number bigger. We want to see people getting help.
Wow, I like how we just took that from very cloudy and
ray of sunshine. Yeah, this is an upbeat podcast.
We reframed it.
That's right.
This is CBT.
We did it.
We cognitively reframed it into. There we go.
We changed our.
Now we're happy. Look at that.
We are.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we are going to get into some listener mail. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
You're back with Pod Therapy, and we are taking your questions. Our first question today is about psychiatric medication. Here's the question. My wife of 6 years just started taking meds for anxiety and depression. Now her behavior is erratic, and she's done things that have scared me. Is it appropriate to insist she see another doctor? My wife of 6 years has been depressed for about a year after her father died. To me, it seemed like very normal grieving, and she was doing well in therapy, but her friend strongly suggested that she needed to see a psychiatrist to get on medications. So she did. She went on antidepressants, and her mood got better, but they also made her anxious. So she went back and got anti-anxiety medications. This somehow affected her blood pressure, so she was given medications for that. Those medications affected her sleep, so they gave her Ambien for daily use and Valium in case of emergencies. This affected her work, so now she's on an ADHD drug called Ritalin. So in a little over 6 weeks, she went from not wanting to even take aspirin for a headache to 7 different psychiatric medications. Twice now, she's really scared me. The first incident was I came home to find her literally slumped over and passed out next to the toilet. She claims that she had just fallen asleep, but she had feces all over her legs, and her face was red, almost like she'd passed out, fallen off the toilet, and hit her face on the bathtub on the way down. Yesterday was worse. We went to see a movie, and she was an emotional roller coaster. She went from screaming to laughing to cheering, more than was appropriate for being in a movie theater, to sobbing uncontrollably at the end. Then she fell asleep at the wheel on the way home. Thank God we were on a side street and going slow because she smashed into some trash cans. I tried to talk to her about it, and when she was somewhat coherent, she said she felt better than she had ever had and that these side effects would eventually wear themselves out. I asked her to please think about getting a second opinion. She said that she wouldn't even consider it because this doctor was saving her life from the despair over her dad. I tried to suggest that while, yes, she seemed sadder with just the therapy, she was making great strides and maybe that it was okay to be sad over her dad. This made her furious, and she threw a glass at me, which glanced off my arm and shattered on the floor. She then slammed a door so hard it broke off the frame. She has never, ever done anything like that to me, ever. I don't know what to do. Is it okay to insist that she see another doctor as a condition of moving forward with me? I feel like I can't worry about her safety all the time, and I can't be afraid of her. What should I do?
Okay. Well, here's the interesting thing. I have to take into consideration what we do for a profession. Because if you take this to somebody who does Reiki, they're going to say that their chakra is not aligned. If you take it to a chiropractor, then their spine's out of alignment.
Right.
You happen to be talking to a addiction specialist here for me and Jim. This seems like addiction to me. All the classic things that are consistent within our field of addiction. First of all, trauma, a desire to escape and to numb. Medication, and not just any medication. We're talking Ambien, diazepam, methylphenidate, which is Ritalin, like all drugs that are highly abused.
Yeah.
And then all of this erratic behavior. Like to me, that would be my first question back to the listener is, how sure are you that she is taking these as prescribed? Because it seems like this could easily be a case of addiction.
So, yeah, I'll jump in on that too, and I'll take it from a little bit of a different perspective. So coming at it like from strictly mental health and kind of putting addiction in the drawer for a second, the first thing that really bothers me about this is here's this person who's having organic anxiety and depression, right? So this isn't as a result of a chemical imbalance in her mind. It hasn't been going on for 6 or 7 years uncontrollably, and now we really need a psychiatrist to step in. There was an external event that occurred. I lost my father. The tree fell in the forest. And the sound that I'm creating in my head is this uncontrollable grief because I'm ascribing meaning to this event. And now I am going through this process. I did the right thing. I put my feet in a therapist's office. I began the process. Husband says, hey, good. Go ahead and continue that work. Friend says, oh, you should get some pills because you shouldn't have to feel these feels. And then we see this domino effect of, oh, whack-a-mole, right? It's like the Hydra. Every time you cut off one head, 2 more pop up. So it's like, oh, take this pill for depression. Oh, that pill gives me anxiety. Take a pill for anxiety. Oh, that pill makes me sleepy. Or that pill's keeping me awake. Take a pill so you can start sleeping. And take not just a sleeping pill, take freaking Ambien or Valium, And then it's like, oh, well, that's making me too drowsy. Okay, then take an amphetamine so that you can stay up now at work. And it's like, that is an insane... Listen, far be it from me to call an unknown psychiatrist out there out and say that they are mispracticing or malpracticing, but this is outrageous to me. Like, that is such a misappropriation of pharmaceuticals on an unwitting person who doesn't know what they're doing, and just that is the inappropriate way. You should not be prescribing new psychiatric medication to treat the effects of the psychiatric medication that you just prescribed. Like, at some point, you have to step back from the table and go, what the hell am I doing? I am pumping this human full of the most powerful chemicals known to man. It's like smashing your computer with a hammer to make it better. And that is not what you should be doing. And I agree with the husband on this. In this kind of situation, it needs a lighter touch. In this kind of situation, and again, you heard us say, I'm pro-medication. I'm not pro this. To me, this is run away absolute abuse of a pharmaceutical license, and it is not acceptable. It is the prescription pad gone wrong. And to my friends who are psychiatrists, I know some great psychiatrists. I know some that are really great practitioners, very mature, very practical. But the dig on their profession is that too often they're in and out. You come in and you go, hey, here's what I'm going through. And they just, as you're talking, they are writing the script. And they're like, get out. 15 minutes in and out, I got 35 more people to see. Whereas therapists, Nick and I, we spend an hour with you and we don't give you pills. So we have no other tools to use except your own body and your own mind and trying to put you back in order. And I agree with Nick. I think that where this person didn't already have an addiction problem, she is extremely at risk for either being in the midst of it now or developing it imminently. And that's something that Nick and I see all the time in our rehab. The largest drug pushers in society now are not the guys on the corner dealing the dope. It's now the guys in the white lab coats who are writing the scripts. This person is getting amphetamines, Nick.
Right.
How the hell did she's an adult and you're starting to hand her Adderall and Ambien and nobody thinks this is a bad idea?
Ritalin, but yeah.
Yeah.
And and this is something that I've seen a lot over the past 10 years in our field is we are getting a lot more of, people in treatment for the first time in later adulthood because of traumatic issues that have occurred and then addiction to prescription medication.
Yes. Yeah. And, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were telling me that they had seen an entire movie and didn't remember seeing that movie. And their girlfriend told them that they saw it. And this person was like, no, that we never saw that movie. And like, no, we definitely did. Here's a selfie of us in the movie theater. Like, we saw this movie. He had no idea. And we were looking at that and talking about it, and he realized, I've been taking Adderall because I get sleepy in the afternoons. And I said, wait a minute. You're taking Adderall, a psychiatric medication, and amphetamine. You're taking that because you're tired? How tired are you? He's like, I don't know. Like, I get a little drowsy in the afternoons and I kind of want to take a nap. So I went to my physician and they said, oh, take this. This got me through med school. And I was horrified. And like Nick is smiling at me right now because as addiction guys, we hear that and we're like, that is so nuts.
Well, yeah. And getting tired in the afternoon is
normal.
That makes you a human being.
You're normal. So if you're out there and, we're making this episode a lot about how we treat things today. But here's something I want you to understand. Here's a general rule of thumb. Any psychiatric medication you can take is a very primitive attempt to deal with the most complicated, most sophisticated piece of machinery that humanity has ever discovered. The brain is a freaking black box of mystery to us. We have no clue how it works. We can only vaguely figure out which sections of it light up whenever you're doing something. And what pharmaceuticals essentially are is this very wide dose of chemicals that we've noticed mitigate certain things. We are still very primitively dealing with this. And there is no psychiatric medication that you can take that does not have a risk, that does not carry with it a possible side effect that could be worse than the thing you're treating. And so my general advice to people is this: do not look at a psychiatric medication as a performance-enhancing drug. You should only be taking it to deal with a clinically significant amount of distress. If you have depression because of the loss of your father, you should be in therapy. That's what you should be doing. If that depression is so overwhelming and catastrophic that you can no longer go to work, the therapy is ineffective, that is now a clinically significant amount of distress. We went over the criteria for depression a second ago. If you're clicking all those boxes, then it's worth the risk to take that antidepressant, right? Mm-hmm. And there's low-dose sertraline, Prozac, things that they're non-narcotic. There's ways to treat this that are very minimally invasive. SSRIs are very minimal. They have a great track record. But now we're playing whack-a-mole, and we're treating side effects when I would rather just clean the table and start over, fresh page, get back in therapy, start there.
So for our listener, what advice would we give? I think you are definitely in the right as far as maybe if you can talk her into seeing another doctor, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be easy to do. But maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if you were able to go to the next appointment with her.
Yes.
To get more involved in that. And, because it's quite possible the doctor has no idea the ramifications of what's going on in her life outside of the doctor's office.
Yeah.
It does seem very irresponsible with what is being prescribed. But yeah, I think I would encourage you to get involved as much as you can and see if you can have contact and at least express these concerns to the doctor so the doctor understands like what is going on with this erratic behavior when she's not around the doctor.
Yeah, even just this shopping list of meds that I'm seeing, and I'm no pharmacist, but just looking at this, I'm like, well, those don't play nice. You're taking Ambien, Valium, and Ritalin. In any dose, that's going to be a problem. And you're taking an anti-anxiety medication. And you're taking an antidepressant. So, like, I am concerned just looking at this. It is dangerous. The fact that she's having violent mood swings, she's behaving in new directions. Now we are seeing a clinically significant amount of distress. Clearly, what we're doing isn't working. And you're hiding from your feelings. That's why, for Nick, immediately the alarm bell came off of addiction because you're hiding from the feels and you're taking drugs instead. That is not an effective way to treat it. So I agree with Nick. Get a second opinion. Whether she wants it or not, go do that because let me tell you something. If you don't get ahead of this, we treat these people whenever they run off the rails. And that is the direction I think she's heading. You better deal with it now.
Definitely. And for all the listeners out there, one other point that I really want to make with this is a really good example of this. And it's something that I talk about with my clients often is I really can't think of a situation in which the solution is to not feel something.
Right.
That always seems to be the direction that people want to go is something happened, I want to not feel it. And I get that. Like, I understand where that comes from, but that's not a long-term solution. Yes. The solution to this is to allow yourself to feel it and develop the coping skills to work through it. Running from it or trying to numb yourself, I've never seen that work.
Right. Novocaine is not how you treat a cavity.
Right.
That's not, oh man, I'm really hurting. I better take another dose of Novocaine so I can eat this burger. That is not the solution. And so numbing out is not going to fix it. Definitely get a second opinion and definitely push her back toward therapy.
Yep, definitely.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we discuss how atheism ruins Mother's Day. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
We're back with Pod Therapy, and we're reading your next question. This question is unlike anything we've ever seen before. This is a new one. I'm kind of excited about this one. All right, so our next one is titled, Told boyfriend's mom that I'm an atheist. She cried, and I think I ruined Mother's Day.
I'm so excited for this. Thank you to whoever wrote this. This is fantastic.
My boyfriend and I took his mother and her husband out for lunch Sunday for a Mother's Day gift. Boyfriend and I have been together for 3-ish years, and I've known his mom just as long. Mother and husband are Christian. Boyfriend and I are atheist. Until now, my relationship with his mom has been sort of don't ask, don't tell when it comes to my religion. She talks very openly of her beliefs and her various activities with her church. I bow my head and I join hands respectfully during prayer and in her home and when they choose to pray in mine, typically mealtime prayers. She has occasionally invited me to church events that I respectfully decline. Mom had one too many glasses of wine at lunch. It has never been a secret to her that we do not plan on having children. I try to keep the baby conversation light to a minimum historically. But the topic came up and upset her. So she bowed her head and reached across the table to hold our hands and pray silently. We held hands for many uncomfortable minutes while she quietly cried, which was awkward for everybody, especially our waiter. I can understand that. My boyfriend excused himself to the restroom. While he was gone, his mom asked if she could ask me a personal question. She asked very plainly, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ?" I shared that I was raised by Christian parents, one of whom is now an atheist, and I identified as a Christian for some of my young adult life, but have not called myself a Christian in more than a decade. She sensed I was being evasive, so she asked again if I believed in Jesus Christ. This time, I just said no. She said that she so hoped that I did. We then sat in silence while she started crying again. My boyfriend returned and we left the restaurant. Now I'm worried that she is dwelling on this information and making assumptions about me because I didn't elaborate. I wish I had said something about this being a conversation we should have and not just say yes or no, or about how I am still the same person I have always been despite this new information. It was never a secret that I am an atheist. We just never brought it up, for better or worse. She texted yesterday morning to blame her emotions on menopause and say, sorry you got caught up in it. I responded that I know menopause can be tough and that I hope she still had a good Mother's Day lunch regardless. I guess my question is this. Should I broach further conversation with her about my lack of religious beliefs? Should I wait until she brings it up again? I really want to maintain a positive relationship with her. Looking for advice on how, when, and what to say, if I should say anything at all.
All I know is I hope they tipped the crap out of that waiter, because that is horrible. Like, there's people crying at your table. They're holding hands silently, bowing their heads. They're praying. Like, that is a very uncomfortable lunch.
Yeah, you'd be like, was it the blooming onion? I'm sorry.
So sorry. I swear I knew I should have gotten them more ranch. They're praying for it. But now if I bring the ranch, am I a servant of God? Like, it has appeared. Thank Dustin. But wow, man, that's okay. So this ruined Mother's Day, but it sounds like Mom texted back and said, hey, I'm sorry, I'm menopausal. Mother's Day's emotional. There's a lot going on. I'm sorry I did that to you. But that's a really powerful thing. This person's saying, hey, I didn't keep this a secret, but his mom is really religious and I didn't want to make it awkward, but awkward sort of happened at us and happened at the worst possible time. It's horrible, man.
This is a difficult situation. And what's really funny, what's kind of ironic about this is that Jim is an ordained minister. You are ordained.
I am ordained.
And I am an atheist.
Yeah.
That's what this podcast should be about. Forget mental health.
Yeah, we should just be talking about that.
Why are these two friends? That's what we should be talking about.
Why aren't they friends, Nick? I have no problem with it.
But this is a difficult situation that I think a lot of people maybe can't relate to.
Right.
It is... they've done studies on this as far as what qualities people would vote for in their politician. And most Americans would vote for every other minority group except an atheist.
Right. They'll take somebody who's an ex-criminal. Yes. They'll take somebody who's they're indicted, like they're under federal investigation, over an atheist.
Yeah.
And that just shows how much stigma there is.
Every group believes that they're the most persecuted group on the planet. I get that.
Atheists have an argument.
Atheists, I feel like it is, because it's very difficult, especially for family members. And I get this. I mean, because if you truly, truly believe what the gospel teaches and your family member comes out and says that they're an atheist, that's like eternal damnation in hell.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you truly believe that, that's a hard thing to accept.
Yeah.
But I guess to our listener, do you approach the conversation? I wouldn't, honestly, unless she wants to talk about it and bring it up again. You said your piece and that's done. I mean, what else will you explain?
Yeah.
What do you hope to gain by bringing it up again? If it's to come up with some kind of explanation behind your beliefs that she's going to understand and that she's going to fully accept and be like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand. That makes sense. I don't know. Maybe that'll happen. Probably not. I think you've said your piece, and I think that's it. If she wants to bring it up again, then definitely that's kind of my approach. I'm definitely open to having that conversation. If anybody wants to talk to me about my beliefs, strangely, no one ever has.
Right.
So it's just something that I just kind of keep to myself.
I think that's a good point, though. And I think that goes back to one of the reasons that Nick and I probably get along. We probably have different base camp understandings of our reality and assumptions about the world and, interpretations. But neither of us proselytizes. Neither of us is like a militant of that camp. Nick's not a militant atheist. I'm not a militant Christian. And even that word has become a weird word. It's fuzzy for me. Like, it's more like, I hope there's a God. That'd be neat. And otherwise, Christianity for me is in many ways kind of a philosophy, like as a worldview. It sort of gives me teachings about how to be kind to people and sort of not to, think that certain things are priorities and maybe to think other things are priorities. But, I just want to congratulate the writer. I really do. I know you went through a really awkward thing, and I can tell that you had kind of rehearsed how to do this. I mean, how you handled it was extremely graceful. And it's funny for me. I was almost laughing is when she's like, I explained that I used to be a Christian, and it made me laugh because I was like, of course you are, of course you were, because the number one creator of atheism is religion. Everybody's an ex something. So but I thought that she handled it really gracefully, and she was like, hey, I don't hate on your side of the story, right? I'm not here to dismiss your worldview. I don't want to hurt you. I value you, and I relate to you. I kind of used to come from that, and so I speak your language. I'm fluent in your way of thinking. However, I no longer align with it. And what a passive and very generous way to present those facts, and it sounds like she overreacted. And it sounds like honestly, to tell you the truth, writer, the best possible outcome happened. She grieved, she dealt with that, and you handled yourself so well that she felt compelled to recontact you and apologize for her reaction. She sees that her reaction is out of line with what you presented. That's awesome. And that means you handled yourself so well and so classily that was available as an option.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, that kind of sticks out to me that, the writer talks about, it seems like you're very concerned about how does this change how she views you. I can absolutely relate to that. I'd say the majority of my family doesn't even know that I'm an atheist.
I was kind of surprised you brought it up. Like, you outed yourself, and I was like, uh-oh.
Because they don't listen.
Yeah, we just went over your mom doesn't listen to this, so she has no clue. Okay.
Broadcasting this on this podcast is about as safe as never.
It's like screaming at the ocean. Yeah,
yeah,
nobody heard you. Okay.
Yeah, so it's fine. I'm not too concerned.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, I get that because that label has a stigma attached to it.
Right.
And I don't think it's really fair, but it is what it is. But honestly, I mean, the what she's saying is like, hey, I've been this way for the last 10 years. You just didn't know it.
Right.
So the person that you know me as is the same person I am now. It's the same person I always have been. And she will figure that out. I don't think you need to have that discussion with her because I think that's where the writer is coming from, saying like, I really want to explain to her, like, look, I am a good person and I have to, I just because I don't believe in your God doesn't mean that, I'm a bad person. You don't have to have that argument.
Yeah.
You just be you. Right. She'll see that.
Let me ask you something, Nick. So you've outed yourself here. You've come out and said, listen, I identify as the writer in this. I'm the atheist. What advice do you have for another person who's about to go through something similar? What advice do you have for the delivery of that message, for your own self-thought, and how you feel about yourself giving that message? Speak for tribe atheists and give them some advice.
That's tough.
It is tough, and I'm putting you on the spot.
Question because,
but I believe you can produce that answer because I think you've had to think this through a lot.
Yeah, and I wish more people would come out and say it. I mean, there's even within the community, there's kind of this divide because, some people feel like really strongly about it and they like want to proclaim it and all that. But I don't, I can't remember who it was. It may have been Ricky Gervais was saying this or somebody, but like, I also don't believe in leprechauns.
Right.
I'm an leprechaunist.
Right.
But I don't feel the need to go tell everybody that.
I see.
It's just because I don't live my life based off of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. I live my life based off of, what I believe to be right and wrong, how I grew up and what I know from what I've learned in my environment. It would be nice if more people did kind of come out as atheists to kind of remove some of the stigma, so a guy like Jim can say like, oh, well, I always had this belief about atheists, but then I met Nick and he's an atheist and he doesn't fit any of those stereotypes.
Defeats the stigma.
Right. But on the other hand, sometimes it's not safe for people to come out about that. I mean, there's a lot of people who are in very religious homes, and you coming out as an atheist may mean that you don't see your family again. And that's tough. I can't tell somebody that, they should come out as an atheist if that's what you have to face. If that's what you have to face, I'd stay in the closet.
Yeah. No, that's huge.
On the other hand, Jim, what advice would you give to the Christians?
Okay. So actually, here's the way I want to think about this, and I'm glad you asked that question. So if you're out there today and you identify as somebody who comes from my faith tradition of Christianity, and you hear the story and you think, boy, I sure do identify with that woman, and here's how I would have handled it, or I've seen it handled it worse than that. Because I think that woman just cried, and made it awkward for everybody, but she didn't become harassing or bad.
Right.
But here's kind of honestly my authentic take on this. my faith, what my faith means to me and the way that I live my life, I see myself not so much as a Christian, but as a Jesus impersonator. So as a Las Vegas guy, I see Elvis impersonators all the time, and they dress like him, and they act like him, and they and they like swing their hips, and they're trying to reenact the person. They're trying to summon the character and be that at other people, because in that case it's entertaining. For me, I try to summon the character of Jesus that I read about in the Bible because I find him charming, and I find him warm, and I find him gregarious, and I'm especially attracted to his concepts of social justice. And so for me, I believe that there is a scene in the Bible in which there's a woman who's stigmatized for her profession. She's a whore. And the religious people of the day, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, are lining up and picking up stones to kill her and to execute her for her crime of being somebody that doesn't fit in their culture. And the position of Jesus Christ is to stand between the stigmatized and the stone thrower. To me, that is the essence of what my faith teaches me. If you're in that situation and you call yourself a Christian, your place is between the persecuted and the prosecutor. And if you're standing there, you're impersonating what Jesus would do. And so if you're out there and you have strong beliefs, if your beliefs do not begin with a defense of those who are stigmatized and thought less of, if your faith does not begin with being the person who stands for justice and protecting those who are hurt and cast down upon, if it does not begin with standing up to the religious, you don't look anything like Jesus. So I think that because my faith is very colored by that concept, I look at this and I just want to tell this person who wrote, thank you for your bravery. Thank you for your authenticity. I think that that's wonderful. And I think you handled somebody that you care about very much with a very sensitive touch. And I think you went with Nick's philosophy of thinking about what you want as a result. Do you want to lose this relationship? No. You want to increase it. And so you handled it delicately and politely, and I think you got the best possible result. And if you're a Christian out there or you're a religious person out there and you have these kinds of encounters or these fears, or you're the mom in this story, my advice to you is to reflect and appreciate another person's authenticity, that their truth is their truth, and you have to admire that about them and value that in them, and remember that the Jesus that you are impersonating, or the Muhammad that you are impersonating, or the Buddha that you are impersonating, there's a certain way that they would live and treat others. And if you're not doing that firstly, then you're nothing like them.
Right. That's great advice. And the other thing too is to the listener, I have to say that is a very brave thing. That's a courageous thing to just be able to be honest and say that. And the other thing too with this is, why is she asking that? I'm sure she's asking that question because she already knows.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. I think most people kind of already know that. Like, I remember there was a point in my life where I went through something really devastating, and it was absolutely terrible. It was the worst thing that I've ever gone through in my life. And I remember having a conversation with my sister who was saying, because my sister is very religious. She's the youth group leader at her church, and all that. And she was saying, well, I hope that by going through this, that this leads you back to Jesus. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Well, she's like, well, because you're atheist. And I never told her that.
Oh.
I said,
how do you know
how
that?
did you know that?
Just like
she's
your
like,
Facebook.
Yeah, she's like, well, I've known that for years. I was like, oh, wow. I mean, like, we've never had that conversation, but like, people, family, I think kind of know.
Right.
And so the fact that you were just able to just say, no, I don't.
Right.
I appreciate the honesty. And I'm sure your mother-in-law appreciates that as well.
All right, that's all the time we have for this week's session. Thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/podtherapy, or on Twitter @podtherapyguys.
Do you want to add your own advice to today's questions? Post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Pretend Jesus Christ.
Thank you, and we'll see you for your appointment next week. Jesus had longer hair.